Oh man, what's going on? Man, so this one's gonna be a bit of a recap. Uh, I feel like I'm finally gonna have to start adopting the moniker of the common sense Christian, because I believe in following like my biblical faith, Christianity, and everything, but sometimes stuff just comes down to common sense. And as they say, common sense is not so common. So over the weekend, a couple things happened. One being a fencer, professional competitive fencer, decided that she would not compete because her opponent was transgender. And so she decided to take a knee and basically forfeit the match. I read quite a few articles on this because I wanted to see if it was any discrepancies in the alleged conversations, because you can see them but you can't hear them. So it said that when she did this, the referee goes to check to see why she took a knee, and she says, I will, something to the effect of, it's not a direct quote, but something to the effect of, I am a biological woman, my opponent is a biological man, this is not a fair match, and I will not fence this person. So then her opponent wanted to check on her and came over to, see what was going on. And I guess because of the distance between them, they didn't hear what she had said. So comes over and she looks at her opponent and says, I love you, I respect you, but I will not fence you. Leaves it at that. So the person who she was supposed to have the match against said something to the effect of, if you forfeit, you'll get black carded, which basically is like some sort of penalty that they have. She says, yes, I understand that will happen. And then the follow-up, which I think is the most important part of the whole thing, follow-up was, there's a member of the board who supports me, and she says, I understand. And then she follows up with, there's rules put in place, and this is all alleged again because we weren't there, we can't hear the conversation, but she follows up with saying, there's rules in the books that says that I can compete. And the fencer person then says, I understand, but I will not fence you. So then there's all the uproar, of course, because there's the one side of all the athletes who are born female, who feel like this is a good thing, and then there's all the people who are the advocates who feel like this is hateful and phobic, etc., etc. Here's why I said it's the detail that I think is important is there's a member of the board who accepts me or whatever. It's because it usually only takes one person to make a drastic change and stuff like this. Like, a board can be anywhere from like 3 members to like 15 or more. Like, it just depends. I've been on boards before, and generally the idea of a board is so that if there's a decision that needs to be made, it can come down to a majority decision. So I don't know what the majority of that board looks like, but it sounds like from all the articles that I was reading that the majority side leans towards more the I guess you would call progressive way of thinking about the whole thing. The other interesting detail that I found is that they have a policy that says if you refuse to compete for any reason, you can get black carded. Now, what I really want to know, which I didn't have time to research, was how long has this been in effect? Because I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that this was something that was put in place specifically for scenarios like this. Because what people are finding out now is that this is the solution to this discussion or this debate or this argument or whatever. Because you have the side that feels that there's absolutely no difference, and as long as you take hormones for a year, then you are completely on par with the gender that you are assimilating into. And then there's the other side who vehemently disagrees with that, and both sides have their evidence that they present. And so it's basically a stalemate. You either are gonna have organizations who are gonna flat out say no, or you're gonna have organizations who say yes. So then that leaves it up to the players to decide if they want to engage or not. And what's happening is the women are deciding to just opt out of engagement, and surprisingly enough, not to me, but to many, the opting out of engaging is making the opposition in that conversation much more upset than trying to stop them from doing it. I've seen this in a situation with a pool player. She's a competitive pool player. She refused to play against somebody who was born biologically a male. She was a champion pool player at that. Like, long running. She refused. The person was furious. She's allowed to play. The opponent just wouldn't play against her. Over the weekend, I saw there was a swim team, a women's swim team, same thing. They just opted out. The stance that's being taken now is people are no longer saying, you can't do it. They're just saying, we won't compete against you. And the reason why this is infuriating is because it removes the ability to win. You can't beat people when there's no people to beat. You can still win. So I retract my statement. You can still win, but you can't beat anybody. And so this is why I say that this is the perfect solution to this issue. Because if you are on one side and you believe that they should not be there and that it's unfair and you simply don't compete, then you did not have to do a match against somebody who you felt had an unfair advantage, yet you did not exclude anyone from said competition. You just on to the next. And if you're on the side that thinks it's fine, no one told you couldn't, you still won, be it by forfeit. And if it's an elite level competition type, a lot of times you can still be judged without having a competitor. Many people don't know that a lot of competitions are done in a style that's called adjudication, and it's not just you beat them. It's you scored this much. So for example, I used to swim. Everybody knows that swim is based on time. So yeah, sure, there's first, second, third, or bronze, silver, gold, or whatever, but it's based on time. In a lot of sports or a lot of physical competitions, there's markers set for certain point values, and you get certain deductions that put you at certain point values. I can use the one closest to me, which is dance, which is scored a lot like gymnastics, where you start at 100 and then you take point deductions for flaws. And so then once your final point is tallied, there's a marker for what's considered bronze, silver, or gold, or first, second, and third, or whatever representation they use for those point values. So you could, in theory, compete by yourself and still take a rank of third because of where your points lie. So just to reiterate, like, it's not removing the ability of competition, but it is removing the ability to beat someone in a way that many deem unfair. And again, I think this is the way that should be handled. I have a son and a daughter. I would never have wanted my son to have to physically do a competition in any of the sports that he played against a girl. I think he did co-ed soccer when he was like 5 or 6. No, he didn't. He did co-ed hockey when he was like 7 or 8, I think. Other than that, he didn't do a lot of co-ed sports. My daughter hasn't picked any sports like that yet. She's more into the artsy stuff, dance, gymnastics, etc. So it's not really a thing, but I wouldn't make her, like, I've seen these people having their daughters out wrestling against like boys. I'm not making my daughter do that. If my daughter was to take on a combat sport, I'm not going to put her in the ring against a boy. I'm not doing it. And the reason why I'm not doing it is because I'm a physical person. I always have been my whole life. So I understand that regardless of what people try to say and what people want to believe, there is a very distinct difference between us as far as men and women go. I once had a workout partner who was a girl, who was female, one of my dance partners. And we were practically on par with what we lifted, because I hadn't lifted in years, and she was a full-time fitness instructor. Fitness instructor / personal trainer. She worked at a gym. On the side, she taught like fitness classes. Aside from dance, her full-time profession, which she had many certifications, was fitness. She was in extremely good shape. And so we worked out together because plate-wise at the gym, we didn't need to swap because we lifted and we pressed the same amount of weight. She still couldn't beat me arm wrestling. If we wrestled around in the dance studio, she couldn't beat me. Not even close. Like, it was not even fair. Now, how is it that a person who by the measuring standard of just pushing weights is on par with me? And I'm not joking. Like, we when we set plates on bars, they were the same. How is it that she can move the same amount of weight as me, but she can't use that strength to the same effectiveness that I can? Because it's different. And if you don't believe, I saw something that somebody said that they were a professional fencer and it didn't matter if you were a male or female. And then here's the part that annoyed me with this. I saw some examples saying my coach was only 4'11", and I've seen them beat people 5 and 6 feet tall. And I'm thinking to myself, of course, a professional fencer with skill is going to beat amateurs. Duh. That's where the skill component takes place. The coach is excessively more skilled. That's true in everything. You can right now go and get some of the most seasoned dancers. Like, there's a guy, many who don't dance don't know who he is, but there's a guy named Mr. Wiggles who was a popper. He did a dance called popping, if you don't know what that is, back in like the 80s and 90s. And he still does till this day. And you can put him in a battle against the most popular battler of this generation in their like 20s. Mr. Wiggles is in his late 40s, I believe. And he would still give them an extremely difficult time if he didn't just flat out destroy them, because the skill component matters. So when you make a comparison and saying, oh, well, there's some people who are a woman and they beat dudes all the time, it's like, yeah, it's a woman who's got 20 years of experience over a dude that just started fencing 2 years ago. Of course. But if you're talking about people in a tournament who are, by measuring standards, generally on par with each other, and you have male versus female, it's probably not going to go that easily. It's just not. And I would encourage people, I looked up the weight of a rapier, which the sword you use in fencing. They, on average, between, I think they said 1.5 to 2.3 pounds or something like that. Go and pick the next time you cross somebody from the opposite gender, ask them to pick up a 1 pound weight and hold it out at arm's length for a while and see how long it takes for them to get tired, man versus woman. And again, I can speak to this just from knowledge and not my feelings and emotions. I've danced my entire life. I did ballet at a very young age. Ballet teaches you how to use muscle groups that most people don't use, and they don't have precise control over. One of those being your chest, your shoulders, and your back. So if you ever see people do like chest, shoulder, and back workouts in the gym, it's because they're trying to strengthen that part of your upper body, because that part, whether they know it or not, is what controls arm movement. I used to watch people in ballroom classes get tired from holding their arms up for like longer than a minute. And then they would look at me and see me holding my arms up for minutes on end. And finally somebody just asked, like, how do you hold frame for so long? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just do. And then one day I had to explain, you're holding all your arm weight in your shoulders, secondary to your chest. I'm holding all my arm weight in my back, secondary to my chest. I'm not using my shoulders at all, because the shoulder muscles are the smallest. The shoulder and neck muscles are smallest, then your chest muscles are bigger, then your back muscles are the biggest. So if you know which muscles to use, it's going to make it easier to control and hold your arms. And if you understand muscle group size, you'll know that men have bigger chest and back muscles on average. But again, the thing that I notice about conversations like this is the people who are the overt loudest, not just the ones who speak out, but the ones who are the loudest are the least physically adept every time. You'll have people say, you'll have guys who are like tiny talk about how they know women who they can barely wrestle and this, that, and the third. But then you look at the guy weighs like 130 pounds and he has no muscle. And he's worked out like twice a year at best in the past decade. Or you'll have women who say it and they're like 3 inches above the average height of most women, and they have like a good 30 pounds weight above most women, and they work out on a regular basis. So they think because they can manhandle the other tiny guy that I talked about, that speaks to the average, and it just doesn't work. And if you ever really listen to professional athletes, they say the same thing all the time. I used to watch a TV show called The Ultimate Fighters where they train UFC fighters, and every once in a while they'll have a co-ed season of amateurs. So they'll bring in like 10 dudes and 10 girls, and they're all pros or all aspiring to be professional fighters. And usually they were professional fighters to some degree beforehand, but they want to move up to a bigger organization. So there's local organizations, and there's like the UFC and Bellator and stuff like that. So they want to move up, and they would train together. And every time the girls would say, "Don't hold back just because I'm a girl," it would end poorly for the girl. Every single time. It's been multiple seasons where they did co-ed. Every time you have this one girl there that's like, "You don't have to hold back. I'm a fighter too. Show me some respect." Blah, blah, blah. And then the dude's like, "Okay." Bow! Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then they're in the post interview. See, it was so. Sometimes you forget how strong the guys are, even when they're little. Like, all the professional athletes agree that it's a difference. It's all the people who don't have any skin in the game, who will never step into these arenas, who pretend that it's not different, on the backs of all these people who have to go out and actually put their like pain threshold on the line for a point that they aren't trying to prove. And the example I always give is, it was all cool with Fallon Fox, despite the fact that she was crushing people's skulls every match. If you don't know, Fallon Fox was a transgender MMA fighter, and I believe in her first 3 pro fights, she sent all her opponents to the hospital with crushed orbital bones. I'm pretty sure the orbital bone is this one, or cracked orbital bones. So when I say she was crushing people's skulls, I'm being literal. She was cracking the skulls of her opponents. The fight she lost that everybody loves to bring up, oh well, because she lost the fight to a woman. She sure did, because that woman was a highly skilled boxer, and boxers who are highly skilled can keep an opponent at distance long enough to wear them out, which is what that fighter did. She just picked her apart so that Fallon had no chance to grab her and just brute strength her way through the match. But again, this is MMA, mixed martial arts. The 3 pillars of it being, if you ask most people, wrestling, boxing, and Muay Thai. Or no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say 3 pillars. Wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, and Jiu-Jitsu. So, take those 4 things that are the primary skill sets. You don't really get a lot of people showing up talking about they training karate. They're usually either a wrestler, a jiu-jitsu practitioner, or a striker of some type. Wrestling, brute strength. Jiu-jitsu, strength and what's the word I want to use? Planning, because you got to be like it's like a chess match when you get to jiu-jitsu. You outsmart your opponent. And then striking, brute strength, but with a more technical precision. So when you got 2 components of the 3, and then when you break those up into disciplines, they mostly rely on strength. Of course, a person that's stronger is gonna do better. If you don't, Bob Sapp was another person. It was a guy who was just a big walking like mountain of muscles. He had 0 technical precision in fighting, but he won a lot of fights because he just brute strengthed his way through all his matches. And then every time he fought somebody who was a technical striker, he lost. So saying all that to say, like, people like to make the argument of, oh, it's really no difference. It's because they don't know anything. Basically. And this is pretty much a demonstration of that. So it's like, what my stance is, let people compete where they want to. Do I agree with it? No, I don't. I think there's a difference. I've been an athlete my entire life. I've observed it. I believe that there is a difference between us when it comes to men and women. And I think it's important to keep that difference separate so that it's fair and people have a chance. But I always approach things from two ways. The ideal and the ideal scenario and the reality scenario. Ideally, it's better if we keep it separate. But in reality, people don't want to do it that way. So you deal with the reality while you work towards the ideal. And the reality is, it's going to happen. People are going to compete in the sport that they identify with. And my advice is, let them have it. Give it to them. Don't even make them work for it. Just give it to them. And then step out and pick it up on the next one. Because it plays out two different ways. Either they get bored. If the idea is true that they're just doing it just because they have there's always the narrative that they failed on one side, so they decided to cross over to try to see if they could do better there. If you take that narrative, then what happens is all the women either quit or get beat out, and then you end up with them just competing against each other, which rounds it back out to it being even, because you have all biological men that transition competing against each other. Problem solved. Still, now it's fair again. That displaces all women from sports, but biological women. But then they could just simply open a new league like they did the first time, which is how we got the women's leagues in the first place. And it's crazy because a lot of times it'll be women who advocate for this, who say they advocate for women's rights and displacing the patriarchy and displacing sexism and how men are always taking away from women and dominating women, and then you put men in a position to take away from dominate. But anyway, or you just don't compete, and then if it's true that that's their reasons, they get bored and they don't want to do it anymore. Again, situation, so it's no longer an issue anymore. So I think it's interesting that this is being handled this way so much more often now. But I think it's pretty much the only way to approach it. Is you don't have to stop anyone from competing in anything, but you also don't have to engage. Let them have it, and be kind and courteous about it, just like this lady was. I love you, I respect you, but I just won't fence you. Tell them, say, good job, think you're great, awesome. I won't compete against you, but I think you're amazing. Congratulations on your win. And then leave it at that.